Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. So my background is neuroscience as well, but I have a master's degree. Luke asked me to speak here today, and I really didn't know what I wanted to talk about, and he suggested maybe I should take this topic, the Nicoyan lifestyle of longevity. And I thought, hey, what a good opportunity to kind of look into something I don't know very well. And he showed me this book called Blue Zones by Dan Buettner. And this blue zone idea kind of started off with Pez and Kuhn when they looked at when they found the highest population of male sanitarians in Sardinia, Italy. And Dan Buettner kind of went around with got some money, and he was trying to find other places in the world where there were a high population of people that were living longer than usual. And so some of these places in the world are Okinawa, Japan, Iberia, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California. And I'm going to focus today on Nicoya, Costa Rica, just because. And so as you see, Nicoya, Costa Rica is on this peninsula. It's a very picturesque paradise and location. As with many of these other places I noticed, it tends to be quite tropical and somewhat isolated. So islands, like Okinawa, Japan, is said to be like the Hawaii of Japan, so it's very beautiful as well. And Iberia, Greece is also an island, and Sardinia is an island, so these are all very kind of rural and isolated places. So what makes these places such beautiful places kind of a breeding ground for these people that are living to be longer and healthier than their regular population? And this is kind of the journey that I got to take when I started looking into these blue zones. And I started watching these videos. So there was this, Dan Buettner took this Quest expedition in 2007, where he got to make a series of videos about his trip with kind of this group of experts to try to study why in these places there were such long-lived people. Okay, so what there started to be a trend of most of these people have a purpose, and I guess as Luke was saying, and perhaps this isn't what we kind of in the first world have as a luxury to seek out their purpose in life, but their purpose is very routine, and most of the time it's for their family, and their kind of their way of life is a little bit less complicated. So a typical day for a lot of these people would be that they would get up over dawn. Their family would meet quickly, maybe have a cup of coffee. So again, the coffee takeaway is maybe part of this longevity thing. And they would start their chores, and then they come in and have a complete breakfast, and this would typically be the biggest meal of their day. And then they continue work, and because it's typically really hot in the afternoon, about 12 or 2 o'clock, they come home and they wait a little bit and have their second meal of the day. And then after that, it's just social and family time. And I think this, kind of looking at this very, maybe not very complicated and not very scientific measurement of, a typical day, we can sometimes draw these parallels where there are these very, very successful people these days, and they're talking about the miracle morning, where they get up super early, they fit in this workout at the beginning of the day, and maybe there's just something to it that we can take away. And I wanted to look at a little bit on nutrition because I guess Luke said he'd like someone to talk about nutrition a little bit at this mini conference. And so these places, blue zones in the world, they have pretty varied meals. So for a typical Nicoyan meal, it consists of gallo pinto, which is the rice and beans, and it's typically fried in pig fat. And they have corn tortilla, plantain, which is also fried, and cuyata is this goat cheese that they would make. And so you've got your fried stuff and your pork, fried rice and beans, and you've got so much starch, and you definitely have milk, dairy products, and fried egg. So although they eat all these things that would typically not be considered in a modern day diet, let's say the low carb diet like the Atkins diet, or would typically be a big no-no in these kind of radical diet conclusions that we've drawn from either one research paper or another research paper, and someone just took that one thing and kind of ran with it. You'll start noticing this kind of commonality that their meals are not processed, and although that looks like a lot of food, it's still quite low calorie. Their typical day would be about 1,800 calories days, because their last meal of the day would be a very, very small meal, because they would have come home, and in the evening, their last simple evening meal, because all they do is just socialize and just hang out, so they wouldn't be doing very much. So they wake up, eat a lot, and then second meal they eat a little bit less, and then the last meal they just eat not very much. So in a typical day, it's still pretty low calorie. So that kind of goes along with that low calorie restriction theme. And and another kind of overarching theme is that it's quite plant-based. It's not complete vegan. It's plant-based. So they do have a little bit of some meat here and there, but they don't restrict it further. But the beans is kind of a theme, kind of among all the different places that keeps coming up again and again. And beans, legumes is a huge source of protein for these people. So it's not that all proteins are bad, but more of a plant-based diet, heavy on carbohydrates, but natural. So how they also emphasized a lot in these videos on their corn tortillas, and kind of and recently there's been a lot of talk about carbohydrates are bad, and that ultra refined corn syrup is it's like poison, but these people are eating products made out of corn, and why is this okay? And it's due to some processing called nixtamalization. And what they do is they soak the corn in calcium hydroxide, so the water in that region is heavy on calcium, and they add lime juice to it and soak it and then cook it. And this way it dehulls, so it takes that the hulls off corn where the parts that's not very digestible, and it also draws out the niacin, so it releases specific vitamins and minerals that are good for your body, and it has 7 times more calcium just because their water is heavy water, and less mycotoxins. So naturally, the acidic, the calcium hydroxide environment kills the mold that's sometimes on these very natural foods. So if we're doing organic farming and stuff, one of the downsides is that because of the lack of pesticides and such, there will be molds and bacteria and that natural stuff. So they're guessing that because of this process, it's making, bringing out kind of good stuff in these corn tortillas. So in a typical day diet of the Nicoyans from mid-1960s, so nowadays there's kind of this more integrated Western diet that kind of penetrated that area, and now it's about, back then it's about 70% carbohydrates and 20% from fats and 10% from protein. And then I wanted to get a little bit more, get a little bit more scientific and precise about what about their diet makes it kind of coherent to this longevity story and life expansion and that stuff. And I started looking into some papers, and I just thought this field was quite convoluted. A lot of times there's, eat carbs or eat low fat, high carbs. And that after the war, I think it was in Finland, they had a huge spike in heart disease because they brought in animal products. And then when they reversed that, they saw that it improved the amount of cardiovascular problems, and this made people want to go for the low-fat, high carbs. But then Atkins, so this article down there, kind of was going, hey, wait, it's how the food industry interprets low-fat, high carbs is to supplement with a lot of a natural things to make it taste good. So a lot of processed foods that, even though it's adherent to a diet, checking off kind of check boxes, it's processed, and it's just we're finding out that a lot of these things are not very good for your body. So like the high fructose corn syrup is not great, like processed sugar is not good. But now we are looking at the opposite, and we're finding out that high protein diet, everyone's kind of on this craze of high protein, and it's supposed to put your body in ketosis, which is supposed to allow your body to start burning fat in your liver. And because of these findings, the Atkins diet is huge, and other kind of diets that has ways from off of that, like paleo and this and that. But a lot of this in our lives are still, we're eating supplemented bars to up our protein intake in a day, and kind of with the previous trend of refined sugars being bad, should we not realize that all this protein powder that we're taking in these bars are perhaps not the best way to go? So I think kind of looking back at maybe these rural lifestyles, and looking at how natural food, and instead of eating what we eat in the stores, in the produce section, or in the groceries section instead of the produce section, so the outside of the store, getting this natural stuff, maybe we should change that outlook a little bit. So to kind of summarize this video series that Dan Buechner took in 2007, he highlighted 8 things that he found to impact life extension, and the first one is the corrigido factor, which is just this traditional way of eating from when the Spanish came over. The corrigido were the indigenous people that lived in this Nicoyan Peninsula area, and so with their corn tortillas and their rice and beans and all that stuff. And second is hard water, so they suspect the hard water is allowing the bones in these seniors to be a lot denser, and so they don't, when they fall, they don't break their hips and this and that. And family focus is, of course, very important because they take care of each other, basically, and that goes along. If you don't have a huge family, it is okay too, in that Japan has these social networks called the moai, and it's just a group of people that you kind of do everything in life with, and so just having that focus is important. A light dinner, which everyone can kind of adapt. So the climate, they thought, had something to do with it. Just the dry climate had less incidence of like lung disease and stuff, I guess, because of the less mold and mildew and this and that. And number 7 is work and physical chores. So just be active, and it doesn't necessarily come from going to the gym and pumping iron. There, a lot of these societies have it kind of built into their daily lives. And plan de vida, which is purpose and why you get up every day. So that, again, is just a common theme on life extension. And I wanted to get into this, but I think I'm a little bit out of time. But yeah, so I really think the outlook on food is important, and maybe even more so than really fishing out the specific proteins that will work and the specific carbohydrates that are going to be better than the other carbohydrates. But there was a study, a psychological study that they did on food between North Americans and Europeans, and they were asked to say which one is different between butter, bread, and pasta. And North Americans, of course, said butter is different because pasta and bread are both carbohydrates, whereas the Europeans said pasta is different because bread and butter goes together. So I just wanted to end off my talk by highlighting maybe it's not in our lifetimes, because we don't have that magical pill yet, to focus so much on these very small parts of what makes one diet better than another, but maybe to think of food a little bit more holistically, enjoy it with people and as it should have been, as it was intended. So yeah, so that's it.